Hello everyone, welcome to Think Like Toppers daily news analysis of the Hindu newspaper. Myself Girish. Let's look into the current affairs of 28 December 2023. The first article deals with the India-Russia bilateral talks which is going on in Moscow. Indian Foreign Minister has been in Russia since a week almost. So the present ties has been hailed by the Indian Foreign Minister as very steady and remaining very strong due to strategic convergence and geopolitical interest between the two countries. From the UPSC perspective, so we need to be aware about the India Russia highlights. The thinking, the way of thinking with regard to foreign affairs should be very present, neutral, and realistic rather than being very illusionized or idealized. And we should not mention the kind of points which are too much generic. For example, when a question arises with regard to India Russia ties in a mains examination, we can't just write India Russia or the all weather ally, or just writing Russia is an all weather friend to India in being a largest arms supplier to India. So these are very generic statement and doesn't fetch good marks. Instead, we need to substantiate our arguments with regard to data, with regard to present day examples which went on between India and Russia. For example, Russian president has hailed India's stance in Russia-Ukraine war for being neutral, for following a independent foreign policy instead of inclining towards Western pressures. So, such kind of examples, which are available in the current affairs section and daily newspaper, we need to be aware with regard to that for a good example based argument. So, when we come to that, India Russia ties highlights are we have key sectors of cooperation in economy, that is the bilateral trade in energy sector with regard to crude, natural gas, and nuclear power. With regard to crude, Russia provided the crude oil supply at a discounted rate to India. This can be a very good example of growing energy ties between India and Russia, and the natural gas supplies and nuclear energy cooperation. For example, yesterday we talked about the Kudankulam nuclear plant which is coming up in Tamil Nadu, and this particular nuclear plant of 1000 megawatt capacity is being built with cooperation with Russia. So these kind of examples really stand out in the answer writing. Coming to the defense sector, we all know and Vladivostok economic corridor, the sea trade route, and India has been part of the international north-south transit corridor. So this can reduce the trade time between India and Moscow by instead of circumventing the instead of availing the long trade route, INSTC corridor can really be a swift game changer between the trade activities between Russia and India. However, uh, being a supporter to India's permanent seat appeal at the UNSC, Russia and India ties have been come under kind of growing issues in recent years due to the China's inclination of Russia. The China Pakistan Russia axis really is a very bad news for Indian ties, even though Russia has asserted that the ties with China and Pakistan doesn't affect India and Russia ties. Russia's growing neutral stance when the border issues between India and China is also quite concerning. So this can be few highlights with regard to India-Russia ties. As a curious aspirants, your thinking needs to just go to Google and type India Russia ties UPSC. Anything you search with regard to UPSC concepts, do add this prefix of UPSC because it directly gives you the relevant websites of top coaching centers so that you can access relevant materials instead of just getting lost in browsing. So further, we can see with regard to the issues of female feticides and child marriages growing in state of Karnataka. Karnataka being the fourth largest economy in India and having an IT capital of India, recently the Mysore and Mandya districts of Karnataka reported more than 100 cases of female feticide. So there was a sex determination racket going on in these two districts of southern Karnataka. So the officials of the Criminal Investigation Department highlighted that the abandoned or the closed closed laboratories and private clinics are becoming the hubs of these crimes in sex determination. So with regard to UPSC, we need to be aware of those laws to be mentioned in our mains answer writing, or it can also be asked with regard to the prelims. In prelims, from the prelims perspective, we need to be aware of the key highlights of these laws. Key highlights means, for example, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, which was recently amended, it raised the number of weeks which is permissible for abortions, that is up to 24 weeks. So this kind of figures can directly asked as a statement in prelims. So when we are writing with regard to these women issues in GS paper 1, so writing these laws as examples, as availability of any government interventions under that headings or availability of legal protections, we should mention these laws. So this conveys a message. This conveys a message to the evaluator that the candidate is aware of the laws which are available to the consent issue. So the Prevention of Child Marriage Act, and this mentions 18 years as the border for classification of an adult and a minor. So recently the Prime Minister had also pitched for making female adult age as 21 years instead of making 18 years as of now. But it has not yet happened. So child marriages are quite difficult to track since it takes place in a very isolated place, and the neighbors or the friends or any relatives of the families do not come forward to report the cases, and it usually happens in the abnormal times. Abnormal times means, for example, very early in the morning, like 3:30 a.m. somewhere in XYZ place, a child marriage is happening at 3:30 a.m. without any tip of information. How can the police or an NGO can track and crack down such issues? So this is the real hardship faced in tackling the child marriages, even though a law is present. Due to lack of reporting, lack of reporting is the main issue to crack down child marriages. Further, So there was a ammonia gas leak from a pipeline of a fertilizer plant in Chennai recently. So after that incident, the government has ordered a temporary shutdown of the Coromandel International Limited fertilizer plant. So we also know that there was a stearine gas leak from LG plant in, I think, in Hyderabad, for example. I think somewhere in Telangana or Andhra Pradesh in recent years. So when we come across news like this, we need to be aware about the law present for this, that is Occupational Hazards and Safety Acts under the new Labor Code, that is which subsumes the Factories Act. This deals with the safety and standards to be maintained in the factories. So key highlights can be asked for the prelims. Key highlights of this law. Further, we can see with regard to the minimum support price, the central government has hiked for copra by 250 to 300 rupees. So there was a direct question previously in prelims, that is recently the government, the center announced MSP for which of the following commodities, and there was around some 8 commodities A B C D E F G H, and there was option A B C D with suitable combinations, and we need to know about which season, that is Kharif or Rabi, which crop MSP is announced by the governments. So totally there are 22 to 25 crops which comes under MSP, and MSP is finally approved by Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs headed by the Prime Minister. And for sugar cane, there is a separate mechanism for MSP, and that doesn't come under the traditional MSP mechanism. That is which is recommended by Commission for Agricultural Prices. On this recommendation, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approves the MSPs. Further, there is a draft released by the UGC with regard to the norms on recognition of colleges in India, and that is, let's read the article. UGC has published a draft guidelines on recognition of colleges. The Higher Education Regulatory Authority, the UGC, recognition of colleges under Clause F of Section 2 UGC Regulations Act 2023. So this applicable to the those institutions come under the definition of college, which is defined under the UGC Act, and the guideline sets the conditions for recognition of colleges and states that it should be affiliated to an university in accordance with the provisions of UGC. That means those colleges which are not affiliated to any of the universities cannot be given recognition under the UGC. So these colleges loses recognition by the UGC. So when UGC recognition is lost, obviously the college status is downgraded. So nothing much important with regard to that article. And coming to further the economics section, Indian banks asset quality has improved in a decadal high, states RBI. The bank's consolidated balance sheet grew 12% in financial year 2023, which is highest in 9 years. About 45% reduction in gross NPAs came from recoveries and upgradation. So when we say non-performing assets, we need to know the definition of this. We need to know the trends where these two can directly appear as a statement in prelims, and we need to be aware about the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So the improvements in asset quality measured by GNPA ratios that began in 2018-19 continued during 22-23. So gross non-performing asset ratio of Indian scheduled banks consistently improved in financial year 2024. GNPA ratio of SCBs fell to decadal low of 3.9%, further to 3.2%. There can be a question. The GNPA ratio of scheduled commercial bank reduced below 5% in financial year 2023. At least we need to know that the range remains below 5%. If the statement says that it remained at 6%, for example, that such kind of statements are really misleading. To mislead the aspirants, purposefully such statements are given. So we need to be aware of these figures to be crystal clear and eliminate those wrong statements. The main driver of this growth on the asset side was the bank credit, which was recorded its fastest pace of expansion in more than a decade. So in this article, we see certain factors with regard to the banking sector, that is the capital to risk weighted asset ratio CRAR, and the types of capital tier 1, tier 2, and coverage ratio and NBFCs. Let's look into what are these. First and foremost is the non-performing assets. Those assets which remain non-paid in 90 days or a stipulated time are called non-performing assets. So the clear definition can be this. So as a curious aspirant, when you see such kind of terminologies like non-performing assets, like capital risk asset ratio or coverage ratio or NBFCs, when you come across such terminologies, just go to Google and type non-performing assets UPSC. Whatever you search with regard to UPSC exams, just add this prefix. So it takes to the websites of renowned coaching centers like Drishti IAS, Clear IAS, Byju's. So these will have the proper definitions or the information with regard to that. So first let us complete what is non-performing assets. So this refers to the classification for loans and advances that are in default or are in arrears on scheduled payments or principal of interest. In most cases, debt is classified as non-performing when the loan payments have not been made minimum of 90 days. Gross non-performing assets, it is sum of all the loans that have been defaulted by individuals who have acquired loans from financial institution. Net non-performing assets, the amount that is realized after provision amount has been deducted from the gross non-performing assets. Further, let us look into the concept of capital to risk asset weighted ratio, which is very important. These can be asked in the prelims directly, like with regard to the definition of the term, that is CRAR, and these are well defined in the textbook Ramesh Singh. So, with regard to capital adequacy ratio, which is also known as capital to risk asset weight ratio, CAR or CRAR, both are same. So, in other words, it is the proportion of the bank's capital to its current risk weighted liabilities. This ratio is used to receive cash and improve the effectiveness and stability of financial systems worldwide. So, this CRAR protects the depositors and improves the efficiency and stability of the financial systems. This ratio helps in assessing the financial stability of an institution. So, it enables to scale uh, the tendency of the collapse in the backdrop of any of the financial frauds. For example, the fraud of Punjab National Bank, which happened in the case of Nirav Modi. The CRAR of that particular Punjab National Bank is assessed in the backdrop of any of the scams like that. So, this protects the depositors instead of getting defaulted. So, CRAR in banking to guarantee that banks have sufficient protection against loss before they become bankrupt and lose depositor money. The minimum capital ratios are crucial. By lowering the risk of bank insolvency, CRARs promote effectiveness and sustainability of country's financial system. That means CRAR. This promotes the financial discipline in the financial system of a country instead of erratic lendings where it goes default. So, these CRAR mechanisms or assessment promotes the effectiveness and sustainability in country's financial system. So, these CRAR came into perspective under the Basel norms. Under Basel 2 and 3, the minimum threshold capital to risk weighted asset ratios is 8% and 10.5% respectively. So, the significance, as said, to make sure a bank can tolerate a reasonable loss and conforms with statutory financial regulations and regulatory agencies checks its CRAR. It serves as a measure of bank capital in terms of the company's risk weighted credit exposure, and it is expressed in percentages. So, the importance of minimum capital adequacy ratios in keeping banks from going bankrupt and losing depositor money is emphasized by their capacity to withstand the reasonable losses. The formula of C capital adequacy ratio is tier 1 capital plus tier 2 capital by risk weighted assets. Tier 1, tier 2 capitals are the forms of capital which is with the banks. The risk weighted assets are those which are exposed to the risk, those assets, those lendings which are exposed to the risks of getting defaulted. So, coming to the definition of coverage ratio, interest coverage ratio is calculated by dividing the earnings generated by a firm before the expenditure on interest and taxes by its interest expenses in the same period. Interest coverage ratio is the debt and profitability ratio used to determine how easily a firm can pay or cover the interest on its outstanding debt. That means this coverage ratio enables to assess a firm's ability to pay the interest on its outstanding debt. That is what interest coverage ratio means. And this is also one of the parameters to assess the health of a firm. That is the credit health of a firm, credit credibility of a firm to avail the funds from the creditors. So this ratio measures how many times a company can cover its current interest payment with its available earnings. So interest coverage is profit divided by interest to be paid. That is the general expression for that. So this is the explanation for interest coverage ratio. Consider a XYZ company and company's earnings before taxes and interest are 10 lakhs. Its total interest payment requirement is 5 lakh. So then the interest coverage ratio becomes 2. That is 10 lakhs divided by 5 lakhs. That is 2. So there is no universally accepted optimal interest coverage ratio. In prelims, a misleading statement can arise. There is a universally accepted interest coverage ratio of 5 or 4.5. So there is no universally accepted optimal interest coverage ratio, unlike capital adequacy ratio under the Basel norms. Under Basel norms, the capital adequacy ratio, the Basel 2 and 3, that is 8 and 10.5% respectively, there is a internationally accepted ratio for capital adequacy ratio, and this is not same for the interest coverage ratio. There is no universally accepted optimal interest coverage ratio. Further, when we look into NBFCs, that is the non-banking financial corporations. These are the financial institution that offers financial services and products, but it is not officially recognized as a bank with a banking license. Non-banking financial corporations. That's why they are called non-banking financial corporations, since they are not officially recognized as the bank with a banking license. The activities of non-banking financial institutions, this include lending and financial services like providing loans and advances, credit facilities, trading in money markets, savings and investment products, managing stock portfolio, money transfers, etc. So recently in 2020, the RBI announced a host of measures to offer liquidity aid to these non-banking financial corporations, and it also proposed a classification of NPS of base layer non-banking institutions from 180 to 90 days overdue. So, due to the supervisory and regulatory framework of NBFCs is based on a four-layered structure. That is the base layer, which is the lower layer, which is known as the NBFC base layer. Here, least regulatory intervention is happen. In the middle layer, the NBFCs in the middle layer would be known as the NBFC middle layer. Regulatory regime is strict compared to the base layer. The upper layer, NBFC upper layer, and this layer would be crowded by NBFCs that have great potential for systematic spillover of risk and ability to influence financial stabilities. That means in the upper layer, those NBFCs are present which has the great potential or great potential to influence the financial stability itself. That means they have the wider market reach. In the top layer, this layer is supposed to be empty. This top layer of the pyramid would be empty unless supervisors take a view of specific NBFCs. That means this top layer remains empty until and unless the supervisors classify a particular NBFC as a top layer NBFC. Licensing criteria for NBFCs in India is the company should be registered under the Companies Act. not the Banking Regulations Act. The Banking Regulations Act is done only for the banks. For NBFCs, they are registered under the Companies Act. That's the difference between the traditional banking institution and NBFC. The corporation must be either a private limited company or a limited company, and it must have 2 crore net owned funds. So, following NBFCs are spared from requirement of registration with the RBI. That is, the chit companies. These are defined in the clause B of Section 2 of Chit Funds Act. The Nidhi companies under the Companies Act, the insurance companies under the IRDA regulations, the housing finance companies under the National Housing Banks. So types of NBFCs are based on deposits, nature of their activity, and their size. Based on deposit, there are two types of NBFCs, that is deposit taking and deposit non-taking NBFCs. Based on their activities, we have the following types of NBFCs, that is asset finance company, non-banking financial companies, factors, investment companies, we have loan companies, we have mortgage guarantee companies, infrastructure finance companies. On the basis of their asset size, the non systematically important NBFCs, the systematically important NBFCs. So the difference between banks and NBFCs are, NBFCs are a type of a financial institutions in India that offer banking service without a banking license. On the other hand, bank is a government authorized financial intermediary which aims to provide banking service under a banking license. NBFCs can't accept demand deposits. That is, like for example, the FDs. FDs cannot be accepted by NBFCs. However, the banks can accept the FDs. So they don't form part of the payment and settlement system. That means NBFCs cannot have an ATMs, or they can't issue checks drawn on themselves. Credit Guarantee Corporation and the deposit insurance facility of deposit insurance are not available. Significance of presence of NBFCs in countries like India are where the access to bank finance remains a challenge for a large population. NBFCs can play a crucial role in mitigating this challenge. The NBFCs are type of financial institutions that offer services to market segments that commercial banks do not do due to highest risks and low returns. So, the financial inclusivity is one of the key aspects, key significance of having NBFCs. The NBFCs also contribute significantly to the economic growth by creating employment opportunities, supporting growth of various sectors of Indian economy. So this also have a critical role in promoting financial inclusion, especially in rural areas, by providing credit to those who may not access formal credit channels. So next we have a small article with regard to participatory notes, where the investments in participatory notes raised to 1.3 lakh crores recently. The latest data includes the value of participatory note investments in Indian equity, debt, and hybrid security. So, participatory note is a financial instruments which enables an individual or entity to participate in Indian market without having registration or presence in India. So, one of the main concerns of issuing a participatory note is it promotes insider trading. This insider trading can lead to speculations of the market and hinder the investors' confidence. Hence, to avoid this, SEBI puts a cap on issuing participatory notes and regulates its issuance. Further, the robust FPI debt inflows seen ahead of inclusion of bonds in global indices. When Indian bonds are included in a global index, the Indian bond market is sure to get a fillip, as foreign funds would buy the government securities in larger quantities, that is which enables the inflow of capital. The inflow of capital, that is the funds, will be easier when Indian bonds are included in global index. The FPI's surge in debt market can be expected in early 2024. So when the debt market has the inflow of FPIs, which is a very good news, where the capital, the lending, the funds will be available for the cash starved entities, and this can enhance their businesses and in turn kickstart the economic cycle with increasing infrastructure, increasing employment, and economic development altogether. So let us look into what FPI is. So, what are foreign portfolio investors? Foreign portfolio investors consists of securities and other financial assets passively held by foreign investors, and it does not provide the investor with direct ownership of financial assets and is relatively liquid depending upon the volatility of the market. Examples of FPI, these include stocks, bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, American depository receipts, global depository receipts. FPI is part of the country's capital account and is shown in the balance of payment. The balance of payment measures the amount of money flowing from one country to another over a monetary year. So SEBI has brought a new FPI regulations in 2019, replacing the erstwhile 2014 regulations, and it is often referred to as the hot money because of its tendency to flee at the first signs of a trouble in economy. So this is one of the key difference between FDI and FPI. FPI is more liquid, volatile, and riskier than FDI. FPI doesn't provide any kind of ownership of the financial assets while investing in an entity. So further, FPI and FDI both are important sources of funding in most of the economy. Foreign direct investment is an investment made by a firm, individual in one country into the business interest located in another country. So FDI lets an investor purchase a direct business interest in a foreign country. For example, investor can make a FDI in number of ways. Common ones include like establishing a subsidiary in another country, acquiring or merging with an existing foreign company, or starting a joint venture in partnership with a foreign company. For example, uh, we can say the Maruti Suzuki. It is a joint ventureship between Suzuki, a Japanese company, and Maruti is an Indian company. The Maruti Suzuki. This is a example of joint venture partnership (FDI). Further, the differences between FDI and FPI are: FDI refers to investment made by foreign investors to obtain substantial interest in enterprise located in different countries, whereas FPI refers to investing in financial assets of a foreign country, such as stocks, bonds available on the exchange. In FDI, the investor has an active role to play. In FPI, he has a passive role to play. And FDI is more stable, and FPI is more volatile and subject to risks. So the entry and exit in FDI is very difficult, and it is relatively easier in FPI, where the investments can done through the exchanges, that is the stock exchange, for example. So FDI, as we know, it is a direct investment. The FPI is a indirect investment. The degree of control is high in FDI, where the ownership control can also be acquired in FDI. No such control is offered in FPI investment, and FDI usually is a long term investment, and FPI is a short term investment usually. Further, we have a article with regard to the SLIM, that is Smart Lander for Investigating Moon, which is a spacecraft launched by Japanese Space Agency. So, what is SLIM? SLIM is a spacecraft built and launched by Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, which has weighed only 590 kgs, which is almost 1/7 of the Chandrayaan 3, that which had a payload weight of 3.9 tons. So the SLIM, the it was launched together with the next generation X-ray space telescope on board a H2A rocket of JAXA. So the main need to sorry the main need to read this article is the SLIM will how its impact on the Chandrayaan 4. What is Chandrayaan 4? Chandrayaan 4 is a LOOPEX. Chandrayaan 4 can be held as LOOPEX mission, that is Lunar Polar Exploration Mission, and this mission is not indigenous to ISRO. This mission is a partnership mission between Japan, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, that is JAXA, and ISRO. Hence, Chandrayaan 4 is a joint venture which is scheduled to launch in 2026 and explore areas closer to Moon's south pole than Chandrayaan 3 did, and this makes the differences. Further, this article deals with the Viksit Bharat Abhiyan, which was launched recently by the Prime Minister. That Viksit Bharat is a motto to make India a developed nation by 2047. 2047 is the 100th year of our independence, and by that, there is a motto to make India a developed country. The author here expresses a intent to make this Viksit Bharat Abhiyan more inclusive and wider in perspective rather than making just a economic development as centric to Viksit Bharat. So let us read the article. So the Viksit Bharat has now formally launched, making India a developed nation by 2047. So it's an opportunity to assess the idea of development intended. The focus and priorities in choice of development planning are crucial and complex. In Viksit Bharat, the economic development is overemphasis. So this is the key issue of the present Viksit Bharat Abhiyan. So the author here expresses widening this perspective rather than becoming an economic centric Viksit Bharat, to make this a holistic in nature with human development and happiness. The aspects included in Viksit Bharat are structural transformation, organizing labor, increasing competitiveness, improving financial social inclusion, governance reform, seizing opportunity in the green evolution. These are the present aspects of Viksit Bharat. The need for material development can be accepted, but this will be one of the many things that will aspire to be an developed India by 2047. The current idea of Viksit Bharat needs to be reimagined to assess what other aspects of development would mean for India. First is happiness as a goal. Instead of Viksit Bharat, the theme could be Happy India, Developed India. That is Kushal Bharat, Viksit Bharat. Happiness ought to be the central pursuit in this journey. Why? Because the author explains that without achieving happiness, development has no meaning. The nations have developed, but people are not happy. For example, when we take USA, USA is a developed country, rich country, developed and rich. They are ahead in technology. But this doesn't mean that they are happy, because when we read many reports with regard to mental health, US has one of the highest population prone to mental health issues. Does this indicate that this developed country, which is having largest economy in the world, is happier? No. But the countries like Finland, Switzerland, which are not so bigger economies like USA, are far more happier in the world. Why? Because the betterment of human development. That means they evaluate not only economic perspective but also the social indicators also. Like, for example, we can see it further. Wealthy nations have only performed on GDP and per capita income and have failed miserably in the context of social and psychological well being, mental health, and wellness. World Happiness Report 2023 shows many developed nations have poor happiness markers. In India's case, India stands at 126th of 137 countries, which is very, very low. So, the curious question whether India will be better rank in happiness index in the years to come, or the development and the Viksit Bharat agenda will remain a dream. So the happiness matrix includes six variables, that is GDP per capita, healthy life expectancy, generosity, social support, freedom to make choices, perception of corruption. So Happiness Report 2023 placed an extra emphasis on trust and benevolence in the crisis situations like COVID-19, meaning happiness is not only about economic growth or GDP per capita. Happiness is about cooperation in the society, cooperation in the society, a freedom to make choice, a freedom to speak freely. These are the social indicators. Having good access to education, having access to healthcare in a cost effective manner, having better life expectancy at the birth. These are the social indicators which makes a nation happier rather than being economic centric. Meaning, for example, in India, intercaste marriages are still a stigma. Intercaste marriages are still a pipe dream in India. Why? Because, yeah, we can accept there are rising cases of intercaste marriage. However, when there is a proposal for intercaste marriages, still the choice of individuals are questioned. So there is no normality to speak in intercaste marriages. So this hinders the social happiness. This is one of the cases. Further, according to the report's parameters, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Netherlands are happiest countries. Countries achieved development not at the cost of social disruption. Rather, they built social connection and support system. That means they built the social capital rather than just building the economic capital. So, happiness induced development model for India is highly pertinent as we are significantly governed by social relationships and cultural mandates. On contrary, the current model of Viksit Bharat, that which merely rides upon economic development, is highly disruptive to our social order. All aspects of life in this development cycle do not change simultaneously. It creates imbalances and contradictions, which cannot be mitigated by just mere economic development. Further, looking beyond GDP, that is there the need to include social indicators for development becomes more pertinent as GDP estimates fail to consider lives of human and social aspects. The agenda for Viksit Bharat 2047 should be more inclusive and comprehensive. For instance, a weightage to Human Development Index, which consists of life expectancy, economic, educational attainment, income levels should be considered. Further, the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development in 1970 created Social Development Index with nearly 16 crore indicators can be another inclusion. Further, the indexes like Global Innovation Index, Rule of Law Index, Poverty Index, Corruption Perception, Global Hunger Index, Equality Index, World Press Freedom Index. These indexes can be incorporated to make a India, the Viksit Bharat, the happier India in the coming years. So this is the centric theme of this particular article, that is how can we widen the perspective of evaluating what Viksit Bharat at 1947 stands for. That is the betterment of Viksit Bharat beyond parameters rather than being a economic centric. Further, this article revolves around the need for making healthcare a priority in the coming year 2024 for India, especially for India. Why? Because let's read into the article. In 2023 Navaratri festivities in Gujarat, which was overshadowed by sudden death of 10 people in 24 hours, and these deaths occurred among the victims aged from 13 years to middle age, that is around 50 years. So it dispelled the myth of heart related issues affects only the aged people. So nowadays, heart anomalies, that is heart related ailments, are affecting irrespective of the age. It is not anymore a age related ailment in India. Why? We can see it further. So marking the paradigm shift in India's disease burden, a communicable diseases persist significant threat. However, the NCDs, what are non-communicable diseases? For example, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, cancer, chronic respiratory diseases have become a predominant. These have become a predominant healthcare challenges. The WHO recently reported titled Invisible Numbers, and it showed nearly 66% of deaths in 2019 in India occurred due to the non communicable diseases. And this suggested that nearly 22% of individuals affected by NCDs were between 30 to middle age, 30 to 50 years old, and they succumbed to death within 70 years of age, as per this report. The specter of NCDs presents a new challenge. The good news is that it is never too late to invest in healthcare. That means it is calling for urgent investment in betterment of the healthcare. The NCDs led deaths are largely preventable. Communicable diseases are usually sometimes uncertain with regard to their preventability. But NCDs are not like that. In NCDs, most of the ailments are preventable, and that preventability lies within the choice. Choice of what? Choice of lifestyle. For example, heart ailments. Betterment of lifestyle with having good physical activities, good having dietary habits. So these can determine the betterment of heart ailments rather than deteriorating it. So why the NCDs have become a silent epidemic in India? It is due to unhealthy diet, lack of physical activity, use of alcohol. These are all rise in India. Recently, there was a report which said that India is a most alcohol consuming country, one of the most highest alcohol consuming countries in Asia. Further, this epidemic also exaggerated due to genetic predisposition. When we look into diabetes, heart diseases, sedentary lifestyle, which also brings with stress, anxiety, and depressions. So India is a diabetes capital because we know that nearly 101 million of them are diabetic already, and nearly 136 million people are pre-diabetic. Cardiovascular diseases tops the mortality charts, and cancer incidences are about to increase by nearly 57% by 2040, that is in next 15 to 17 years. Individuals, those who are affected, also poses a substantial economic burden to the country. So public health is not only a social issue, it is connected to the economic aspects of a country. That means a healthy individual is the one who can drive the economy of a country forward. It is not the ill health individuals, right? It is common sense. So, World Economic Forum estimates India could incur a staggering cost of $4.5 trillion between 2012 and 2030 due to NCDs and mental health conditions. So, this is the loss. These figures can be incorporated in our mains examination for a better outstanding answers to be written in the examination. Resolution for 2024: India aspires to become a $5 trillion economy by 2027. Growing incidences of NCDs is a pressing concern which can hinder the dream of India to reach $5 trillion economy. The National Program for Prevention of Control of Cancer, Diabetes, Cardiovascular Diseases, and Stroke and 75-25 initiative onus now lies on the individuals who take charge of their health. That means there is a need for individuals to be made aware of their healthy lifestyles. While New Year resolutions are made only to be broken few months later, and this kind of resolutions cannot be afford to be broken. That is about the public health issues. Our health is determined where we live, work, engage in other activities, which brings factors such as urban planning, environmental pollution. Further, certain suggestions to make public health better in future are: we can integrate more natural movement into our daily lives. For instance, we can walk where possible instead of taking a vehicle, just 30 minutes every day, and can increase cardiovascular fitness, strengthen our bones, body, muscles, and reduce fat and increase endurance. Second is opting for slow food rather than going for fast food. Slow foods prepared with necessary ingredients that are right for us, and food that is consumed with appreciation. And there is a connection between what we eat and the health of our environment and communities. Third is we can take out a few hours once a year and get a comprehensive health checkup instead of having a reserved or a stigmatized mindset that it is better not to know, to it's best for me to be proactive so I can overcome it. So fourth one is we can make health at dinner table, and water cooler conversation. Why not ask what they did for their health? How much did they walk? Do they feel anxious? It is only a normalizing this conversation. So when we speak about these issues, people still feel uncomfortable, and these should be normalized to share health tips from each other at a dinner table, for example, at a conversation, for example. So winning the war against NCDs is not just vital for individual well-being; it's also a decisive factor in safeguarding health of the nation. Better health of the nation is the better economic development of the nation. We commit to making healthier choice for 365 days and beyond, and it represents a collective dedication to shaping a healthier and more prosperous India. For a healthier nation, the power to transform the nation lies in daily choices of citizens, reflecting a profound understanding that the well being of individuals directly impacts the well being of the society. In committing to Resolution 2024, we recognize that small actions, when multiplied across millions, it can generate a major paradigm shift in the future. So, this kind of shift lays the foundation for a brighter future of ourselves and future generations to come for a healthier nation. So this is all about today's current affairs. Quite a lengthy video. However, it was very important articles at last. So if you like this video, do like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Think Like Toppers. TLT in short. Think Like Toppers. I would like to make a video why I kept this channel's name as Think Like Toppers, which is really interesting, and I'll come with it shortly. So, if there are any kind of suggestions of improvement from my side, they are all welcome in the comment section. I'll be waiting so we can build and constitute a well informed citizens community through this YouTube channel. So, please show your love by subscribing to this channel. Thank you.